Hi, I'm Lara Paquete Pereira. I'm a project coordinator of a youth provision in East London. I'm a facilitator, a youth worker and an activist. I'm also a creator of a charity called Road Mums, which is dedicated to work with mothers within the community, because I believe that as a community we lost that sense of what really a community means. Being a parent is the hardest work to do, but in terms of how to do a good job, there's no instructions, and I think that's when the role of community is pivotal. I've worked as a mentor in a secondary school dealing with BME background. It was quite shocking for me to realize that the same experience I had 20 years ago as a young person in a mostly white system, children in this country are still experiencing and having the same experience I had of institutional racism in school. I come from a middle-class family when both parents had a high education, and when we migrated from a East African country called Guinea-Bissau to Portugal, we were taught to integrate, and that integration sometimes is not something that's very clear to us. So as a Portuguese speaking person, which is my first language, most of my experiences from primary school to adult life were in Portugal. My experience of racism whilst in the formal education setting, is quite similar to these young people who I had the pleasure to work with. The only difference being that the racism that I experienced in Portugal as a young person was was more overt, and the experience that young people have nowadays in school is covert. Because it's covert, it takes longer to point it out, takes longer to realize what's happening. But because Black children have the knowledge and know how to identify race at an early age, the young people, they were quite knowledgeable, and they did understand that some of the experiences they were suffering was due to institutional racism. They do, in some of the research I've done with them, they identify that same acts can be punished harsher if it's them, the Black children, committing the act in comparison with their white counterparts. They know how to identify institutional racism perpetrated by the white teachers. They know as well that some of the staff that are Black follow the same system, in terms of system that informs them that Black children tend to be punished a bit harsher. In my time as a mentor in school, I had two of my young people arrested by the police under the suspicions of being involved in a stabbing accident. 2 weeks later, they were clear of all charges, but they were still excluded from the school, and they end up sitting at home for 2 weeks waiting to be put in a people referral unit. This is a clear example of what we can call institutional racism, because we're talking about two Black boys are being accused, and later on the charges were dropped. But the school, that did not stop the school from excluding them. We need to come up with better solutions towards young people. We can't just exclude them, so that's no longer part of our problem. We've been excluded, let's put it in people referral units. But technically, what is people referral units? It's a holding cell for criminality. We need to come up as a society with better solutions that might involve having not only formal educators in school, but having informal educators in school. Because as youth workers, that's what we do. We connect with the young person. The mentoring is not a chat with the young person. We're assessing what are their needs, we're assessing what are the friends, we're assessing as well what kind of background do they come, how's the life at home, and all those external inputs that can actually influence young people to make the wrong decisions. And we know that from the age of 13 to 18, young people, their lives are more influenced by their peers than by adults like teachers or other professionals or parents that come in contact with them. So there needs to have a change. A change needs to take place in order to, instead of excluding a young person, we actually put more things in practice, more measures in practice that are going to help him overcome whatever exploitation, because sometimes they are exploited and society still refuse to look at them, the ones that are committing the crime, as children that are exposed to exploitation. As a youth worker, a black woman and a mother of black children, I am angry. I'm angry that my melanin dictates what outcome I would have in life. I'm angry that that same melanin will dictate what kind of positive or negative outcomes my children will have in life. I'm angry that I can't stop my children from experiencing racism because it's part of the society. I'm angry that young people today still have the same experience of racism I had as a young person. But I also have the courage, because things have to change, changes have to take place. As a community, we need to come together, regardless what color you are. We need to assess your bias, assess why you feel so threatened by these others, and just have a conversation. Get to know people. Let's come together as a community and look after ourselves, regardless what religion, sexuality, or race you are. Especially because race is purely a social construct. It does not exist. It does not exist. We need to move on as a community and look after each other. And the problem with institutional racism or racism, people tend to say is due to ignorance. It's not due to ignorance, because, for example, we are here in Goldsmiths University of London, and there's an occupation, anti-racist occupation taking place for more than 120 days. That's a proof that racism doesn't just happen when there's people haven't got enough education. Racism happen because there's a system. So, for example, in Goldsmiths University of London, there is an occupation taking place, and this is a proof that institutional racism is everywhere. In terms of professors, in terms of academic professors, in England, there's only 25 women of color that are professors in England. Numbers need to be increased. If you look at attainment gap regarding the black students in comparison with their white counterparts, even in higher education, although black students might start the degree with the same grades as the white students, by the time they're in second year, either they dropped off or they're far behind in completing their coursework. Something is happening, and that's institutional racism. That's sometimes we're not capable of calling it directly, but it's racial bias.